Hi there. EmberOctane was announced at EmberConf. More precisely, the preview edition of EmberOctane was announced at EmberConf, and a lot of people are very excited about it, myself included. It's a new programming model for Ember.js, and the way I feel is that it's really going to change how we build Ember applications. So in this short screencast, I would like to show you how I converted a small application to use EmberOctane's features. So what is EmberOctane? As I mentioned, I think about it as a new programming model. Lots of things have changed for the better, I feel, and these features have now landed in EmberOctane preview. Some of them had already been added in an Ember stable version. Some of them are under development and are close to the finish line. The guides have already been updated for EmberOctane, the preview version of EmberOctane, and I recommend you check out that page, the additions page. I'm going to include the link in the show notes. And here there is the very good overview of the features that are coming to Octane and also the features that are being removed. So I recommend to check that page out to get a good view on what's included. Now this screencast is special in two ways, I think. The first is that I'm not going to build an Octane app from scratch, but I'm going to upgrade an existing application to Octane. The other interesting thing is that I had already been using Octane features with add-ons in this application, namely decorators and a version of Glimmer components that is called Sparkles components. And I also use ES6 native classes. So this makes my application, I guess, easier to upgrade to Octane, but we'll see what challenges I faced during this upgrade. So I went ahead and listed a few major Octane features in this list, and we are going to track our progress here. And actually, as I said, my application is kind of a bleeding edge application. So some of these we can already tick out. I don't use jQuery. I use angle bracket invocation, which, by the way, you can too if you have an Ember 3.4 or a more recent version of Ember in your application. And I use ES6 native classes. I also use decorators, but as we will see, we will have to change how we import those decorators. So I leave this item active for the time being. Okay, so in preparing for this screencast, I had gone and updated my application to Octane. And the way I did this, and I think this is a very important comment to know, is that instead of using Ember new -b, EmberOctane app blueprint, I did Ember init and the same arguments because I already have an application. So -b stands for blueprint, and the way you try Octane in your app is that you use the Octane app blueprint. So what that did is that it changed the package.json file and some other files. It's very similar to when you do an Ember CLI update. It will change your files to the new version. So it's what is interesting here is that Ember source, Ember data, and Ember CLI all come from not a stable version, but like a hash. And Octane app blueprint is being updated. So if you decide to try it on your application and face some hard to debug issues, then I suggest that you first do the same thing so that you upgrade your application to the newest Octane version. Okay, we are now ready to start upgrading our application to Octane. First thing that I suspect will happen, well, actually I know will happen because I already done this once, is that we'll get these linting errors as template linting has become stricter in Octane. We will address those later because we also have other more serious errors that prevent our application from working as before. Let's check out those. Yeah, the first of these is that I'm still importing from the Ember decorators package, which is no longer in the project. So let's fix that in models game. So if we open models game, we can see that author and belongs to are imported from the Ember decorators package. The way this is done Octane is that those are simply properties on the top level DS export of Ember data. So we can just say, well, yeah, it was still easier that way. Author belongs to comes from DS. Right. And the other thing that we need to change is that we need to call these as functions for the time being. That might change in the future, but this is still needed. So that's one. Okay. Let's see if we get another error now. Yeah, we moved on to the player model. Again, here, so author should come from the top level DS export, and it should be a function call. Okay. We'll have to do something about computed too, because that comes from Ember decorators. Let's see if that's the next problem. Indeed it is. So let's go ahead already and use tracked properties. Now instead of computed properties. Now tracked properties is possibly the feature I'm most excited about in Octane, because it will really simplify the way we do re-rendering, like marking stuff that should cause re-renders in our applications. So instead of using a computed and defining for each property what the dependent keys should be, tracked properties flips this around and just ask us to mark which fields, which class fields should cause a re-render or a recomputation in our class. So if you take a look, we can see that it's historical elo points here that should really be tracked, and further down we have elo points. So we should mark those two as tracked, simply by using the tracked decorator. The same here. Okay, and we have to import it from Glimmer tracking. Right, and so now we can remove that. So it's you don't have to define for each of your properties, computed properties, what they depend on, but it's the inverse. You should just tell which properties in your class cause re-rendering, should cause a re-rendering. Oops, sorry. So if I save that, Couldn't find module glimmer tracking. Oh yes, I made a typo. There's a semicolon. The semicolon is not where it should be. Okay, so the next thing is, I keep forgetting this, is that attributes, like Ember data attributes, are already tracked. So you don't have to mark them as tracked. Getters and setters will auto track any tracked fields they encounter. Okay, so I should go back and just remove that tracked thing, and then we don't need to import this. Let's see the next thing. Standings item is another model that I have. So it should be done the same way. Okay, so yeah, instead of here, I should say const at belongs to from here. Let's do the attr replacing. That should work. Okay, do we have something more? And now the OR. So that OR is a computed macro, right? And so these computed macros will still work as decorators. We just don't import them from Ember decorators, but we import them from where they are in Ember itself. So you don't have to do anything special. You just keep importing macros as before, and they will just work. So instead of Ember decorators, I think it's Ember object computed. We'll see. Couldn't find Ember decorator. Okay, so that's the tournament. I think that's the last model that we have to change. Here to has many. So here we have a has many. And that should do away with those errors. Okay, so now our models are clean. Let's move on to the other files in our project. The next file that Octane has problems with is the index controller, which also has Ember decorators stuff on it. So that indeed, here is where we see action and computed instead. So again, we should use tracked instead of computed. So let me just remove all the computed stuff in here. And let's see what fields should be marked as tracked. So if we take a look, we can see that sort, so this depends on sort by. Sorted players depends on the sort field, which is this one. So, and sort by seems to be the property that's changed from the UI. Let's just double check it from the index, from the template, I mean, and indeed you can see that mute this sort by, so it changes that from the drop down, from the select tag. So that action is not even needed, I think, because we use a mute, the mute helper, so we can get rid of this one. And so the only property we have to mark as tracked should be sort by property. And then we can say, then we have to still import the tracked decorator from glimmer tracking. Okay, let's see what that did. Okay, now that's something different. So the problem was what I mentioned in my introduction, is that Ember is still, no, sorry, not Ember, Octane is still being actively developed, of course Ember too. So I had an older version of those packages, Ember CLI, Ember Data, and Ember Source, and it introduced a weird breaking thing in my application, but just by installing the latest version of Ember Octane blueprint, that solved it. So what I did is Ember init -b and then just applied the diffs in the package JSON. And now when I'm running my app again, I receive these warnings, but the error is gone. And here is our new error. So we still have Ember decorators in the detailed player card. So let's fix that next. Now we have a component which needs to be fixed. Detailed player card. Yeah, that's the one. So we cannot have Ember decorators object, and it is used for a computed property, which we'll again replace by a tracked property. So let's see, selected formats seem to be the one that we need, and selected format array is being tracked, selected lines. Yeah, so that again, that should be enough. Here we are, we have the actions. So if you just mark that as tracked, and replace, well, not replace computed with tracked, but mark this one as tracked, that should be enough. Do we have more? No. Okay. And here, down here, I think action should be fine, but let's see. No, it's not fine, and we need to update that too. So I was wrong. You can just use the action decorator without importing it. So in a regular Ember app, pre-Octane Ember app, you had the actions hash and just regular functions inside it. We now use decorators in Octane, and we need to import the action decorator from Ember object. Let's see if that fixed our problem. It did, but now we have another problem coming from reach button. So the detailed player card component seems to be fine. Reach button has a tracked property, and that's because the reach button is a Sparkles component. Sparkles component was a Glimmer component implementation in, again, pre-Octane times that I had used. And you can see that it implements its own tracked property coming from Sparkles component. So for the time being, I'm just going to remove this, import, comment out this tracked definition, and see if that helps us see our page. Okay, it does. So now this page also works. The color of these buttons doesn't change, but that's because we are not tracking the right things in our reach button component. So these are the reach buttons here. So we will fix that. So let's see how we need to fix that component, the reach button component. Currently it's a Sparkles component, but one of the things that Octane gives to us is Glimmer components. So we can say, so just let me replace that instead of starting a new one, Glimmer component. And so tracked comes, we need tracked to, tracked from Glimmer tracking. And with Sparkle's component, I needed to track the args, the component arguments that are passed in to the component. But track properties in Octane work differently. You just need to tell which class fields need to be tracked. So in this case, as you can see, we want to react to the changes in color and selected. The icon style needs to be recomputed, and that icon style is used in the reach button itself. You can see it right here. So that means that we have to mark both selected and color as tracked. And that will hopefully restore a working reach button. So now if I click the button, if I toggle the button, then it changes the color as previously. So this seems to work. Let's see our short list of Octane features that we wanted to upgrade to. So you have now established tracked properties. We replace computed properties with tracked properties. We introduce the Glimmer component. We use a Glimmer component where previously we used the Sparkles component, so that's done too. We might come back and replace other components in the application to Glimmer ones, but we see one such example. And we also replace the decorators with the new decorators coming from the Ember packages themselves. So we seem to be done with that. Let's just check that our application works as before. So one of the things that it does is that it rearranges players in a nice animated way. And so tournaments, this is just the like tabular data for the time being. And yeah, all the pages work just fine. So we are done with that part. We still have a few template lint errors in our console, so let's finish by fixing those. So I restarted the application just to see all of the template linting errors that we have, and let's fix those one by one. And the first one is in our application template, and it says ambiguous path animated orphans is not allowed. Use animated orphans with an @ sign if it's a named argument, or this animated orphans if it's a property on this. So that again is something I'm very happy about. Octane will bring so much clarity to our templates, because you will be able to distinguish at a glance which are component arguments that are passed in. Those are called named arguments, and you have to use the @ sigil to mark them. Or if it's a property on the component itself, then you should use this dot, right? Or not even a component, controllers work the same way. You have to use the this prefix if it's a property. And whatever is left, so here it says, if it's a helper or a component that takes no arguments, then you must manually add it to the configuration rule, the no implicit this one. So in this case, animated orphans comes from the Ember animated library, and it indeed needs to be called without any arguments. So let's add that to the template lint RC, and instead of having a global true, let's say we should allow animated orphans. So here, this is a list of all the helpers or components that we allow. I must have made it. Oh, yeah. Okay, so that's one. Let's move on to the detailed player card. We have two errors in the detailed player card. template. First, on line 6, we have transition. And transition is a property which is defined in the detail player card component class. Let me just show you quickly. So this is the transition, which will tell Ember Animated how to animate this element. So in this case, we should just use this dot transition. And selected lines is also a property on the controller. We have, yes, right here. So in this case, that should be this dot selected lines too. That seems to be all the errors that we have in that file. And then line chart is the next one. Here, again, the linter, the template linter complains because it's just, we didn't use any prefix. And in this case though, line chart gets this as an argument. So lines is the argument that gets passed in. Let me verify. Here you can see that it passes in all the lines. So in this case, this is not a property in the component, but an argument that gets passed in. So we should use a named argument in this case. And finally, we have in the index template, we have a transition again, which again is a property which is defined on the controller in this case. And that's it. So I hope I piqued your interest in trying out Octane. I'm planning to do more videos in implementing other Octane features, or just converting more components to Glimmer components where it makes sense. I'm going to also have a resources section in this video so that you can read the guides and then try it out. You can also sign up to my dev journal where I'm developing this application and writing short blog posts about it. So that's it for today. I hope to see you soon.